So I'm working on my 2002 Ford Ranger, and this is a 3-liter. And what I'm having, the problem I'm having right now with it is it's idling high. Now, what I'm going to show you is to replace basically the parts that are related with your idle. The biggest thing that I noticed when you work on these trucks, this truck is a 2002, so it's getting old. A lot of the plastic stuff is just wearing out. And in this video, I'm showing really an extreme way of doing this. I mean, if you were to, a lot of mechanics say us people on YouTube, we just throw parts at people. Well, if you go to a mechanic, they're going to charge you 70 some odd dollars usually, if you're lucky, just to do a diagnosis. So everything I replaced on this car, and I did replace the A1C quite a few months ago, but everything on this car, all these idle parts, if you find the right deals, you can replace all these parts for $100. So you could go to a mechanic and pay them $70, and then they'll probably charge you, maybe for the A1C or they'll charge you probably $70 a part anyway. So you could just go ahead and replace everything yourself and be good to go. So the reason I started this again, my car was idling around 1100 RPMs, and when you put the car in park, it would go to about 2000, 2500 RPMs, which is a problem. It's putting too much stress on the torque converter when sitting still. So the biggest thing that I was concerned with is I put a lot of miles on this car, literally almost 1,000 miles every 2 weeks. So I bought my new Mustang, but I don't want to put miles on it. And this thing's almost 8-9 months old now. Still only has 3,000 miles on it. And the only reason it's got that many miles is my wife drove it till I got her a minivan. Or until I got her in a new SUV. Which my review of that 2018 I got her. So I still put a lot of miles on this car on a week to week, just because I don't want to put them on my new Mustang. This truck will become my daughter's truck, as I've said before. When she gets old enough, or she is old enough to drive, when she finally gets all her driver's license in Texas done, which is quite a bit of work. So the things that will affect how the car throttles: the A1C valve up here, and usually if this valve is bad, you'll have a rough idle problem. Your throttle position sensor, your TPS, your PCV valve, and again, I'm going to show the video on all this except for the A1C. And this is the air control valve, but it's idle air control valve. I replaced this on a previous video, so I won't show that, but everything else I'm going to show. And then I also replaced my MAF airflow sensor, and I rewired the pigtail on it, and I made it extra long. The reason I did it extra long is normally this wires, they lean up against the hoses, so if you get an extra long, and I also put quick connect valves or quick disconnects on this, so I can always change the pigtail in the future. The reason I changed the pigtails, I've pulled this thing off probably 100 times, and I didn't see any reason to not replace it, knowing that this connector was getting a little loose and stuff. The MAF airflow filter, I got on eBay. I'll put the link to the parts. I only paid like $15 for it. It's probably a little cheaper, but these idle control valves, or I'm sorry, not idle control valves, that's that. The MAF airflow sensors are about $60 remanufactured at AutoZone, so I got a cheap one on eBay. I hope it works. And I'm right now, again, I'll show the video on this. I did the pigtail, MAF replaced. I also replaced the TSP, the A1C, and the PCV valve. Those are the things that in most cases will give you problem on idle. The other problem would be air getting into your throttle body. If you actually go to clean this throttle body, which I've done in the past, and I didn't show that in the video, just keep in mind if you do that, you need to use like a brake clean or something else. And do not spray directly on it. There's a Teflon coating, I believe. I don't know if it's Teflon or whatever material that helps seal the valve when it opens and shuts. If you do all this stuff and you still have a problem, the next thing you would do is you would check that to make sure that coating's still on. If not, you can buy the spray and recoat it. The way I tested it a while ago was I put some water on it, made sure the water didn't leak into the throttle body, and which it didn't, so I was good to go. So the things you will need for this, you will need some Loctite. You have to Loctite these screws in when you're done, and the blue, make sure you don't use red. You will need electronic cleaner. Again, when I clean electronic joints here, when I replace and put a new sensor in, and that's a throttle position sensor, you always want to use an actual electronic cleaner that's designed for it. Don't just use like brake clean. I always have a spare magnet in case you drop a piece. A pair of Corbin wrench, I don't know what they actually call it. It's just designed for the Corbin locks. On this, it makes it easier. You could use a regular pair of pliers. I find it's very frustrating to use the pliers, just makes it a lot easier. And the PCV valve I got at O'Reilly's, and I'll put a link to it in the description. And I got this is the old throttle position sensor. And I got this at AutoZone. And the only reason I had to go to O'Reilly's for this, and I got different places, is some AutoZone by my house didn't have this part in place. So, and I'm not showing the box for the MAF because simply it came in a white box. So again, after replacing all this stuff, my car is now idling at 750, which I'll show in the video like it's supposed to. When you start, the biggest thing is you want to disconnect your battery. This will reset the computer with all the new parts. So you need to make sure, unless you're quicker than me, it took me about a half an hour to do everything. But if you're quicker than 15 minutes, you need to make sure the terminal, negative terminal is unplugged for at least 15 minutes so the computer completely resets. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward to do this. It's not hard. And I'll show you the complete video of the process. Is I'm going to wire a new pigtail in because the fact that I've just changed this plug in the past, and I'm going to replace the MAF airflow sensor on this car. The wiring is going to be the biggest pain in the butt, as I will have to break something as I go. So I'm going to go ahead and rewire this with a new pigtail, and those can be a real pain in the butt to do because you got so many wires here. And I think the reason this is not working correctly is simply because I've removed this thing so much it's no longer connecting. And so it could be this pigtail, or it could actually be the connector on the MAF. But to be safe, I'm going to go ahead and replace both the MAF airflow sensor itself, and I'm going to replace the pigtail. So what I have here is I have my new pigtail, and when I wire these back and I replace these, what I'm going to do is use quick connects. So if it ever goes bad again, you can just simply replace it with the quick connect. So I'm going to put quick connects in. The only one I'm not going to quick connect is I'm going to use with the ground, and you always do this so it doesn't accidentally come undone. The ground one will be permanently connected. The rest of them will be quick connects. So yeah, in the future, if I ever had a problem, I would have to cut the ground, but you don't want the ground to accidentally come undone. So everything else will be on a quick connect, and that'll make replacing in the future if there's any problems. The other thing that makes life easier when you do a rewire is to have a pair of these gauge, and it makes stripping the wires a lot easier. And I believe this is a 18 gauge or 16 gauge maybe. Yeah, so it's a 16 gauge. It makes it easier to go ahead and cut these. Before I get to the truck, I'm going to pre-do all these. So to make this easy, it's easier just to go one at a time on this. So I'm going to start at the end, make sure they match, and go through this. The ground, I am going to do a ordinary clamp on. We'll leave this wire a little bit longer. So take the mass airflow sensor off. You need a T20 with a hole in it. And I had to go to the store multiple times to get the right piece. So this is the throttle position sensor. I'm going to replace this. Some electronics cleaner to clean this up. valve is located on the back of the intake manifold. And it's hard to see, but it's right here. And you can see the hose. If you follow the hose off the back, this is your PCV valve. So when you take this off, make sure the cables or the hoses are on the, looks like I'm going to have to zip tie this back, are up higher than the hoses so it doesn't leak coolant out. Right up, running lower RPMs than what it is. And as you can see, it has a check engine light on. Well, that's because I forgot the first time I started the car, I forgot to hook the MAF airflow sensor back up, so it gave me an error, and I was dumb enough to run the engine for a while, so learn from my mistake on that. But the car is idling lower. I'm going to reset the computer, and I'm good to go.